As a teen, I lived in a nice newer home on Vulcan Road in Perkin, Indiana. My parents and I were the second family to live in it. When we went to just view the house to see if my parents wanted to live there, I found myself afraid to go inside. I was only 12 years old at the time and had no idea what I was afraid of. I had encounters with things I couldn't explain before, but they never scared me like this house did. My parents talked me into going inside. I wasn't happy, and actually I cried, but went in anyway. It had 3 bedrooms and a large basement and a yard. My dad and mom decided it was perfect for us and started with the purchase plans. Inside the house, the back bedroom, which faced the woods behind, and on the side of the house, truly was only part of the whole place that made me feel very uneasy. I made mom promise that I would be put in there to sleep, and she agreed that I would get the larger of the 2 bedrooms in the front end of the house. The problems didn't start right away for me anyways. My parents took the room that I refused. My dad was away a lot for work, and so my mom got the first experience. She kept them a secret from me till my last day of school. That year we had gotten new bedroom suits, and I was put in that room. Not for long enough. Not many 17-year-olds sleep with their moms, but after waking to see a woman sitting on the side of my bed one night and disappearing before reaching the foot of my bed while walking away, I slept with her every night afterwards. She was a dark figure with no real features to me, but I could tell it was female. I also seen dark shadowy figures dancing in the basement. Everyone heard the heavy footsteps upstairs while we were all downstairs, scratching in the attic. We moved back to Kentucky when I graduated in '86, but even though the house had its issues, it was the only place I'd ever called home. I went back and visited the next owners years later, and they had all the same experience as we had. The only difference was a young couple had tried to live there, and when they had a new baby, the ghost got a little violent and knocked things from the walls. The young family moved for fear the baby would be harmed. Behind the house through the woods is a cemetery, 11 or 12 graves, all dated from the 1500s to 1800s. I used to hang out there to sneak and smoke cigarettes. I can't help but wonder if it was someone from there. I hope to someday get the time to go visit whoever lives there, 21 years later. There's a story on here about a house in Mudlick Hollow in Hardy, Kentucky, known to those who live there, or remembered by those who lived in the Sharondale, Kentucky area. The story states that the White House on the right is haunted. Correction, this house was owned by a lady by the name of Gracie. She lived in the house when I was a child, and never once was any report of anything unusual. She and her sister lived there for many years, after she became quite old. These stories might have happened since her death. Across from her home in the old stomping grounds, there were many stories of ghosts of American Indians. It is reported that glimpses of these Indians can even be seen during the day. This was known as an Indian burial ground. I can verify this because I was one of the children who actually saw what appeared to be an Indian. The Indian seen was wearing what appeared to be hides and carrying a spear, or something that might have been a spear. I was not the only child who saw this during the day it happened. There were many of us there playing ball during recess from the grade school, and we all saw it. But there are many other hauntings in this area, and none of them mentioned here, such as the graveyard that was up on the mountain across Highway 119. This graveyard had been in disrepair even back in the 1950s. I used to play in that area as a kid, and know that there have been unusual happenings since even before that time. The train trestle that used to cross Old Highway 119 from the upper part of Sharondale coal camp to the side where the coal was loaded into the train car. That trestle was the one place for dares as a child. There were a few children who were injured there taking those dares. To this day, nobody knows what the real story is about the old trestle. The trestle is now gone, but the stories remain. There was also a house that was used for storage along those tracks. Part of the house was used for storage things for repair to the homes of the coal miners in the upper and lower coal mining camp homes. That particular home was rented to a couple with one child. The mother often came across the road to another home, completely frightened by things that happened in the home. She stated that the light bulbs were burst, even when there was no reasonable means of explaining it. Many stories of hauntings in the home still abound. Note, the homes are now gone. The highway programs that took the area for a larger highway. Miners whose lives were taken in coal mining accidents still roam that area. A woman who was killed by a big cat up on the mountain, whose shrill screams can still be heard during both day and night. Different areas in the mountain where soldiers were killed. Mines that were closed are also rumored to be haunted. The same area is known to have different stories of men who were killed by revenants back in the early 1900s. Men killed by revenants, some whose bodies were found, and others who just went missing. I have an experience to share with all of you. When my grandfather died, we went to my grandmother's house to check on her. She had a clock that when my great-great-grandmother died, it stopped ticking then. When my grandpa died, it started again. It had not ticked for a long time, for about over 100 years. My grandpa had always wanted to hear it too. Maybe it was him that did it, or just a coincidence. My gym basement at my school, when I went to the bathroom in gym class, my friend came too. It used to be a locker room for a high school. We were about halfway down the stairs when the lights started flickering on and off. Then the water at the sinks turned on, and the stall door slammed. Then we turned to run up the stairs, and in the corner, we saw a boy that you could see through, and he had a hunter green shirt with black dress pants. We screamed and ran up the stairs where most of our class was there, and no one believed us, but we knew what we saw. Me and my other friend, we went down there and had to use the bathroom, and she was scared to go by herself. Oh, I ended up going down there with her. We were standing at the bottom of the stairs, noticing how freezing it was, and it was so cold. Oh, she went over to the first stall, then she started to open it. Then I screamed, and then she said, "What?" I said, "Turn around," and that's when she did. What we both saw was a girl wearing a dress with bright red eyes, with a black outline of some sort. He had a possessed smile. That's when she said, "Leave." The way she looked into our eyes when we saw her was straight evil, and my friend and I had nothing to say. One time I went with another one of my friends down to that basement, and when we were there we saw something strange and unwanted. We were standing at the very end of the stairs, and we were walking into the bathrooms, and at that very moment, we saw a strange looking girl just standing there, and she was just staring at us. Now, keep in mind this used to be an old school that was at least 90 to 95 years old. Oh, me and my friend just stood there for a moment and stared at her. Then we suddenly saw her eyes were plain black. It was so scary. Then me and my friend slowly walked away. But as we were going up the stairs, we noticed that she was following us. We looked back. We wanted to, but at the same time we didn't. And there she was. It was truly freaky. This was so freaky that she was right behind us, reaching for us and wanting to touch us. So we ran. We thought no one would believe this horrible, frightening incident, but luckily quite a few people did. And that's why many people didn't like to go into the basement anymore. One summer, my 3 children, my sister-in-law and I were traveling to my hometown in South Carolina. We live in New York. Oh, it is a pretty long way to go. It was foggy that morning, and my car had been experiencing trouble. We broke down near Pennsylvania and found ourselves sitting on the side of the road, maybe about 8 hours from home. A police officer pulled up behind my car. My youngest was 2 months old. He was screaming very loudly. When he saw this policeman, he started smiling and laughing. Dressed in an older style police uniform, it looked to be a style from the 70s. He had the most beautiful face and voice. He walked around my car and then laid his hands on my car. My car started to back up. Then he just disappeared. I can't explain it. I looked up from the dash, seconds after I saw him standing in front of the car, and then he was gone. No policeman car. No police car. Nothing. No one. We didn't even see him leave. As a matter of fact, we didn't even see him pull up. I thank God for that angel in disguise. We made it home safely. I grew up in a house that was always open to everyone and warm, but it did have its secrets. When I was very young, and the house was empty, I would hear my name being called, and I would run from room to room, thinking someone was home. My brother said this also happened to him on Saturday mornings, when everyone was asleep and he watched cartoons. One night as a 12-year-old, I was sleeping in the upstairs hall while my room was being finished. I was sleeping with my face to the wall, and softly my shoulder was being pushed, thinking someone in my family was wanting something. I turned around to face the room. There in front of me was a small couple, a man in a suit and a 1930s hat, and a sweet-looking woman with a pillbox-like hat. I think they liked what they saw because they looked at each other, then smiled, and then turned around to go down the stairs. I never saw them again. Many years later, in a conversation with my mother, she told me the small house with the low ceilings and low working areas was built for a couple in 1939, and before they could move in, they died in a fatal car accident. I guess they were just checking up on their home. Well, my boyfriend is a non-believer, but he says he wants to believe. Oh, back before we started dating, we would find things to do where he might see something and come around. I was very picky about these places because I'm a firm believer, and also I scare easily. Oh, I didn't want to get myself into a situation that I would have a hard time with. As a result, I choose places that I've been to many times and was comfortable with. We had been to a few, and I'd heard something or whatever. But generally, I've attributed this to my imagination because I was worked up. But one experience stands out. We were on the USS Constellation, known for hauntings, but I had taken him there more as a glimpse of my own past. As a native Baltimorean, or Baltimorean, as my father likes to say, and a lover of history, I practically grew up on it. I was completely relaxed as I usually am there. And Rob and I were standing on the Orlop dock, looking over the rail. It's my favorite place on the ship. Don't ask me why. My least favorites are outside the Champlain's corners and in the infirmary. Given the history of the ship, the Orlop really shouldn't be my fave, but it is. Oh, we have been standing there in silence for a few minutes, just kinda taking it in. It was a cold day, and we went there right after work, so there was hardly anyone else on the vessel. And so after a few moments of quiet, I say, "Cut it out." What, he replies. Well, he knew what he did. He put his hand around my waist, upping the curve of my hip, as we weren't dating at this time. And in fact, I believe we were both seeing other people when this happened. I thought this was pretty dang inappropriate. I turned to tell him so. He was standing too far away from me to have done that. He didn't move as I was standing directly next to him, and would have noticed. What? He said again, a little more forcefully, looking rather concerned for my sanity. Nothing, I said. I didn't want to think about it and ruin one of my favorite childhood retreats. After we were off the ship, I told him what had happened. He still really wasn't convinced, hence I'm the one who experienced something. Not him, but he did admit that the ghost has good taste. That's sweet, I think. I just want to say that I love your website and couldn't help but to share my story with you. A few years ago, my great-grandfather was very ill and in a nursing home. My family and I lived far away from him. We only made a trip up to see him around Christmas and his birthday. One day when I was 15, and my brother was only about 2, we were sitting in my living room watching TV when all of a sudden my little brother started crying. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he wanted to go see Papa. I thought it was weird because he had only met Papa a few times. My mom came in the room and told him that Papa was very far away, but that we would go see him soon. My brother started crying harder and was screaming, "I want to see Papa now." My mom held her in her lap and kept telling him not to worry, that Papa was fine and we would go see him soon. When he started to calm down, the phone rang. It was my aunt. He told us that Papa just passed away. My whole family was creeped out by this experience, and none of us had really talked about it since. My little brother does not even remember it. This took place in 1993, and I have two separate stories, same place and year. When I was about 16, I was living with some friends in Cleveland, Texas. I was attending school there with my best friend Mary, and living with her and her family. We had a couple friends that we went to school with. One girl was very strange, shall we say. We will call her Claire, and there was the other friend named Barbie. We lived almost at the end of a long, narrow, dead-end dirt road. There was only about 6 houses on the road, and we were surrounded by woods. We lived in the next to last house on the street, and Claire lived in the house that marked the dead-end road, and her family rarely came out in the daytime. They were more night creatures, if you will, and they had about 6 stray cats just hanging around the house. Mary and I decided to stay the night with Claire one night, and in the nighttime when it all got very weird, Claire was talking about witches and witchcraft and sorts, when suddenly I saw right behind Claire that there was a witch's head just hanging from the ceiling. I mean, it was staring right at me with big bulging red eyes, and it seemed real. When I told her it was right on the ceiling, she looked, and there was nothing. And to this day, I have no idea if I was hallucinating or if I really saw something evil. Our family had an experience several years back in our old house. I tried to submit the story a few years back, but I don't think it ever was posted. I'm the last one to say I believe in ghosts, and normally when people tell me they saw a ghost, I listen, but figure they are full of it. Well, this time I'm glad that my entire family heard it. I don't care if anybody else believes me, because at least we know it happened. It happened several years ago. Maybe a good 28 years ago. I was around 7, if not younger. At the time, I was sleeping in my parents' room with my dad, and my mom went to lay down with my brother since he had the flu. The way our house was is that we have 3 bedrooms and 2 doors that we kept closed, that closed off of the back of the house to the living room and kitchen. We had all just started to fall asleep when we were woken up by a really loud thump. Then the sound of something heavy running and ripping up the carpet. It reminded me of our old cat that used to run down the hall, and her claws would get stuck in the carpet, but this was much, much louder. The noise came and went very fast. My dad had jumped up and got his gun and went outside thinking it was someone running on our roof, but there was nothing. He came back and asked us all if we heard it, and we did. To this day, we have no idea what it was, and it never happened again. My brother and I talk about it to this day, and we get chills thinking about it. I'm sure it is something that could be explained. But what? It was too loud for any house noise. Our plumbing we never had issues with. Like I said, I'm glad our entire family heard it, so that way, they know I'm not making something up. I've never had another experience like that again. And now I'm interested in the idea of hauntings, but I normally am more on the factual and fantasy side. But that has made me think that just maybe there's something to all the supernatural. One thing I know about my story, I know it is real. I've read other stories on the site and think a lot of them are fabricated, and I'm sure if reading mine, people will think I'm making it up, or my entire family is making it up, but we know it happened. My stories were told to me. The first was told by my dad. My dad was an 18-wheeled truck driver. The stories he told seemed far-fetched, but I swear to God he's telling the truth. One night driving a long stretch of highway, he came upon a beautiful dog. The dog barked, but he knew he had hit the dog. He got out of the cab of the truck with his flashlight, who gave the dog a proper burial. When he looked up and down the ravines, and what he found was not a dog, but a family with the dog. They had crashed down the ravine 2 hours earlier. The family survived, but the dog didn't. The next story was told by my brother, and now sister-in-law, then girlfriend. In 1995, my brother came to Texas, then Georgia, to be with our dad. At that time, he was very ill. My sister-in-law, then girlfriend, was in Georgia. Our dad passed away late at night. My brother decided to wait till morning to call my sister, because she had to be working early the next morning. My sister-in-law called crying instead. She was scared and shaking. Then she said that about 2 a.m., she got up to get a drink in the kitchen, walked into the living room, and that's when she saw Dad sitting on the couch. Then she said hi to him, then continued into the kitchen, and then realized that he was supposed to be in Texas, not knowing he had passed yet. That's when she walked back into the living room, where he was sitting, telling her he needs to tell her something, and she screamed no, and runs back into the bedroom, then slams the door, locks it, and calls her best friend cousin, who was a cop, to come to the house, and no one is there. When my brother tells her our dad had passed, that is when she freaks out more. I just wish I knew what he wanted to tell her. Oh well. Well, if you got to the end of the video, please leave your name and number, oh maybe not number, but please leave your name, your comment, and share this video all across social media and any place you got it. I don't care if you have 1 million fans or 1 fan, or if you're just, just hanging around for the ride. So please give me a shout out. By doing that, I guess I messed up. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm just going to say, guys, share, like, comment. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in this comment section below which is your favorite story, please, because I am desperate for engagement. These videos are honestly doing pretty badly, so I don't know if I should keep them or not. So let me know in the engagement section, which is the comment section, if these stories are good for you, and like, comment, and leave a share. Love you guys as soon as possible. Well, I mean, you guys can comment as soon as possible. Now, I love you as soon as possible. So, I don't know what that means, guys, but I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.